What is up, crazy koalas, and welcome back to the channel. We are doing deck upgrades again. Yes, back by popular demand, we are going to be doing some deck upgrades. So we have a lot lined up, but we thought we'd start things off with the Ninetales Deluxe EX Battle Deck. It's been on my shelf for quite a while, and I took it off, did the upgrades, and we are keeping the series very simple: 10 cards in, 10 cards out. So we'll be calling it 10 in, 10 out. So before I get into specifics and a little bit about the deck and what we put in and what we take out, here's a message from the sponsors.
This video is sponsored by Solarpop, South Africa's premier importer of board games and toys and TCGs. Go check out their socials in the description below. Solarpop, go play.
As mentioned in today's video, we'll be doing the Ninetales EX Deluxe Battle Deck, and we'll be putting in 10 cards, taking out 10 cards. But before we get to that, we need to speak a little bit about what the deck is capable of, and of course our namesake, what this Ninetales EX does. So its first attack for 1 energy does Heat Wave for 30 and the active Pokemon is burned, but we'll be focusing on the second attack, Mirrored Flames, 80 plus. 2 energies. If you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, this attack does 140 more damage. So in today's meta, 220 is a little bit low, but luckily the deck came with a friend and we'll be leveraging off it quite a bit, and it's this. The Rapidash that comes from Silver Tempest, and it's all around its heat boost ability. Once during your turn, you may discard a fire energy card from your hand, and during this turn, your fire Pokemon attacks do 30 more damage. These can stack for multiples of them, and with its attack for 60 damage for 2 energies and a retreat of 1, we kind of have a synergy. This is going to be a very linear deck. We will break down the 10 cards that we put in, the 10 cards that we take out, and what the deck looks like at the end. So let's get to that deck change. Alright, let's talk about our 10 inclusions and what they are, and maybe a little bit as to why they are the inclusions. First and foremost, because the deck luckily comes with 3 Ninetales EXs, we only had to include 1 Ninetales EX of our own. Following that, we needed a little bit of acceleration. All the attacks require 2 energies, and we want to be able to attack from nothing to full as soon as possible. So I decided to add in 3 copies of Magma Basin. Magma Basin is the stadium that once during each player's turn, that player may attach a fire energy card from their discard pile to one of their fire bench Pokemon. If they do, that Pokemon takes 20 damage. So it's just a way for us to accelerate some fire energies. The deck had no gusting support, so we added 1 copy of Boss's Orders and 2 copies of Countercatcher. Because the deck is a little bit lackluster with regards to the support involved and how much damage it's going to be doing, we are more than likely going to fall behind, which is why I decided to go 2 Catcher and 1 Boss and not the other way around. There are 3 copies of Judge in the deck, and because the Ninetales is centric around having the same amount of cards as your opponent, we added in a 4th copy of Judge. And then just as a little bit of spice, because this is a fire deck and I like to try and keep my budgets my budget's low on these upgrades, I added in 2 copies of Mela. Now, Mela says that you can only use this card if a Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Attach a fire energy card from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, and if you do, draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. So this just goes with Magma Basin, allowing us to charge up a Ninetales in 1 turn. So with that being said, let's see what the final deck list ends up looking like. Right, from a Pokemon standpoint, it was pretty simple with regards to the linear approach that we are taking. We kept in our 4 copies of Vulpix, and then we have our 4 copies of Ninetales EX, followed up by 3 copies of Ponyta and 3 copies of the Rapidash that we discussed. So that is the Pokemon line, almost guaranteeing us to start a Vulpix or a Ponyta, but of course we hope for the Vulpix to be our starting Pokemon. As for the trainers, we have 3 copies of Magma Basin, which we added, 2 copies of Professor's Research that came stock standard, 2 copies of Mela, a copy of Boss's Orders, 2 copies of Jacq that allows us to get some evolution Pokemon. And because the deck strategy is surrounding having the same amount of cards as mentioned earlier, we've got 4 copies of Judge, and we have 3 copies of Zisu that allows us to draw cards until we have 1 more card than our opponent. So that at least allows us to still play a card afterwards. On that note, not to mention that when it comes to hand fixing and this support, Ninetales is a big factor because Heat Boost allows you to discard the energy. So if you get up to the point where you have got too many cards in hand, it's a nice way to ditch a card and it adds to your damage. Going to Pokemon Search, the deck luckily came with 4 Nest Balls in deck. And as you saw there, a little bit of foreshadowing, it had 3 Ultra Balls as well. We've got 3 Earthen Vessel that allows us to get those energies to pump up our attacks. 2 switches that all came with the deck, and then we've got our 2 counter catches that we added. We've got Super Rod, Pal Pad, and Energy Retrieval to wrap up the trainers for the deck. As for the energy count is 3, 6, 9, 12 energies in deck, which I feel is relatively standard in today's meta, to be quite honest. Now, we've discussed the cards that we've added. What about the cards we cut? Now, almost always when we are doing pre-constructed deck upgrades straight off the shelf, the one thing we always cut is energies. But surprisingly, in today's video, we are only cutting 1 fire energy. Outside of that, we are also cutting 1 energy retrieval, 1 Professor's Research. We are cutting all 3 copies of Youngster that came in the deck, the 1 copy of Jubilife Village simply because it just wasn't synergistic, 1 Ponyta because it was a little bit redundant, and then the 2 copies of Paldean Tauros because we want to start with the Ponyta or preferably the Vulpix. So those are the 10 cards that we cut out of the deck. And there you have it, your very own upgraded Ninetales EX deck. Now you can find the full deck list in the description of this video below and try it out. If you bought one of these decks, I recommend these upgrades. The total value of the cost of the upgrades will be right here, somewhere on the screen, just so that you know that I kept today's budget very, very low because this is our first 10 in, 10 out. Before you run away, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we will be doing a string of these coming up. For those who have bought decks off the shelf and just need a little bit more help with regards to how to handle these upgrades and how to tune the strategy, because these decks aren't necessarily bad, they just need a little bit of guidance to get you over the finish line. So big shout out to Solarpop again for sponsoring the video. I do appreciate all of their support. You can find their socials in the description below as well. All of my social medias there, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and Patreon if you guys want to be a part of that quarterly giveaway for the value of prizing up to 3,500 Rand or more, thanks to our sponsors at Solarpop. Guys, I'm going to give this deck a real run for its money. And what we'll do is maybe in the next video after we do another upgrade, we can do a little live stream on Twitch and put them head to head. I'll bring in a guest and we'll see how the decks play against each other. So if you stay till the end, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your support. And until next time, cheers.
I would like to give a shout out to all of my Patreons. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. No matter what the tier is, no matter how long you've been a Patreon for, I appreciate you.